Today's podcast is sponsored by AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens. There is strength in numbers, folks. Join today at amac.us/Carter. We could lose the state of Texas. We, meaning the Republican Party, the Conservative Party, literally can lose the state of Texas. Something big happened in December that very few people know about. And the Texas Attorney General, Ken Paxton, will be joining me to exclusively discuss in detail what this is and what we need to do as Texans and as Americans to save the two-party system. Because, folks, the Democratic Party has been after these states, particularly the state of Texas, for quite a long time. And they may have found the loophole to ensure that they take it back. And I'm really mad. I'm going to be talking about that because I just moved to the state of Texas. But you know what? If they are ready for a fight, I am ready to fight them. And that's why I'm here. I'm part of the people that want to save our nation. I want to continue to fight the good fight legally through the courts, the way the Attorney General is, the way our founding fathers set it up for, so that we do not lose our country and our freedoms. I am also going to be talking to you about a series of stories that I've been doing for Sean Hannity at the Fox Network on fentanyl. And our battle for our children is greater than it has ever been. Ever been. I want to tell you right now that the leading cause of death, and I know you've all seen this report, of Americans ages 18 to 45 right now is fentanyl. I want you to think about this. This is according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. You can go to my website, saracarter.com, where you will be able to read that story. I want you to think about that. Our children, when you look at our kids, and I'm telling you, I was just at the coroner's office in Ohio. I've talked about this before. The youngest child they found there that died of ingesting a counterfeit pill was 12 years old. 12 years old. So even though it is the leading cause of death from 18 to 45 right now, these are counterfeit pills on our streets. We have never seen this before in the history of our nation. I want you to think about this. This is a new paradigm shift, and I'm going to be talking about it. There are counterfeit pills all over our country, and they are killing Americans. And it's not just the drug cartels, but it's China as well. And I will explain to you how illicit fentanyl from China is an evolving operation. It's a global operation by the Chinese Communist Party, who knows that this is coming into our country, knows that these illicit precursors are entering Mexico, and that the drug cartels in Mexico are producing these pills with the help of the Chinese, and they are coming into our country. And those are just facts. Those are just, I'm not making conjecture. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Those are facts. And we need to pay attention to what is happening here. Please follow and subscribe. Get all the links at saracarter.com. That is saracarter.com. And folks, while you are there, sign up for our email list. This way you don't get shadow banned. We don't want, look, I'm going to talk to the Attorney General about this too, because he's part of a huge coalition of attorney generals that are fighting these big corporate giants, right? We've never seen anything like this before. They're able to shadow ban us, take away our advertising dollars so that we don't exist. There's a big antitrust lawsuit that Attorney General Paxton is involved in as well. And we need to discuss that. We need to talk about that. He is on the front lines, folks. I want you to know that all of our attorney generals are literally on the front line. And some of them, like Paxton, like Brnovich out of Arizona and others, they are fighting the DOJ. They're fighting U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland's big push by the Biden administration to control and put more government control and federal control across our country, whether it's mandates on vaccines. We'll talk to him about that as well. Folks, Mike Lindell, I mean, we're going to get to that really quick, but I want to talk about Mike Lindell first. He is a good friend and he is a true patriot. And he is also the inventor and CEO of My Pillow. And he has been keeping a close eye on the recent supply chain issues. And he wants you to know that My Pillow is in stock. There are no back orders. There is no delayed shipping for all of their products. So we don't need to worry about the supply chain issue. Why? Because My Pillow, listen to this, is made 100% right here in the United States of America. And they have built a huge inventory. There are no supply chain issues, no delays, no backlog. You get what you need when you need it. I want you to go to mypillow.com and I want you to click on the radio listener specials for specials like 40% off all my slippers. And listen to this, 50% off all My Pillow mattress toppers. If you have a mattress and it is not that comfortable, I am telling you right now, get a My Pillow mattress topper. It is fantastic. Enter the promo code Carter, that's CARTER. You will get 50% off of it. Or call 1-800-685-7221. That's 1-800-685-7221 for great My Pillow specials. That's 1-800-685-7221. Use the promo code Carter at checkout. Save now on all My Pillow products. Now at mypillow.com, code Carter. Carter, not Connor. Although everybody thinks it's funny. They always say Sarah Connor. That's always like, I hear that all the time. I go to a dentist, Sarah Connor. I don't know why dentists always say that to me, but this is like the third dentist, my new dentist out here in Texas, he actually said that to me. I'm honored by it. I want to be like Sarah Connor. Hopefully I can be like Sarah Connor when it comes to fighting the fight here in Texas to keep our state red, because it's not the old blue, right? This is not about like our father's Democratic Party or my grandfather's Democratic Party. I think this Democrat Party would literally throw John F. Kennedy out in a heartbeat. They wouldn't want him. They are radicals. And we have seen this. We have seen this across the board. We have seen this in the support for district attorneys, no bail, low bail. We've seen Democratic cities just completely fall apart. And we have seen a scourge across our nation of deaths. And I talked about that. Between 18 and 45, leading cause of death, according to the CDC, is fentanyl. And I want to tell you why. It's not because we have addicts, running all over the place. We've always had that. In fact, if you look at charts, you'll see a constant, like especially on graphs. And I've been talking to folks about this, where it's been pretty steady as far as like addiction rates in the United States. Increasing, yes, but at a steady pace. But come 2015, even in 2013 and 14, you start to see a spike go up, and it's in fentanyl, and it's fentanyl deaths. And this is a new paradigm shift. Why? Because all over our city streets are counterfeit pills being made by drug cartels, being shipped into the United States. And these pills aren't just pills that are laced. In the very beginning, they noticed that, okay, yeah, Percocet, Oxycontin, some of these other pills were laced with fentanyl. What we're seeing now on the streets is just bonding agent and fentanyl. I've been talking about this on Sean Hannity. We've done this special. Tonight will be the third night of this special on the show, where I'm going to be interviewing. I did interview a mother whose daughter died because she took a Percocet. A friend of hers gave her. She was at her house. She had actually injured her back weeks before and had like basically impounded like in her back. Her backbone was damaged and she was in a lot of pain. She took a Percocet from a friend of hers and she died. She's a beautiful, beautiful person inside and out. Her mother said her best friend, somebody that was not a drug addict at all, who wasn't even taking this pill at a party. It was just because she was in pain. She wasn't at home. She took a Percocet and she thought it was a real Percocet and she died. Actually, she was a part, and I want you to watch this on Sean Hannity tonight, but she was a part of 11 people that died that weekend from these illicit drugs. You do not want to miss this interview. It could save the life of your child or a family member. You must pay attention to this. And I'm going to be explaining a little bit why. I'm going to let you listen to a clip here. This was from Sean Hannity. This was our first night that we did the show on fentanyl, and I'm at a crime lab in Houston. This is the Texas Department of Public Safety crime lab. I am with a crime lab specialist, and I want you to hear what she has to say about fentanyl on our streets now and why this is a completely new paradigm shift in the drug crisis in America.
When I think about fentanyl, you need chemicals, you need precursor drugs, right?
Yes.
To help make the fentanyl, right? And it used to be that the fentanyl was coming directly from China. So you got these precursor drugs, explain that. And then they use those to make the fentanyl, is that what it is?
Yeah, so they just adjusted based on what was controlled overseas. And so now, instead of getting the fentanyl, like you were saying, they're getting the precursors, and then they're synthesizing it or kind of assembling the drug themselves in Mexico and then sending it across. I mean, there's some that could still, come through the mail directly in the U.S., but it seems that the primary route is through the southern border.
People that think they can tell the difference between a real Oxycontin and one that's been manufactured in some lab somewhere, it's maybe even in a trailer somewhere in Mexico, right? Tell me how a layman can tell the difference, can they?
It's really hard because a lot of times in the lab for us, they fool us. And so we don't usually know that it's not a real tablet until we run it on our instruments, and then it tells us, nope, that's something totally different.
For a child or a teenager that got a pill from someone at school, they would never be able to really tell the difference.
No, it'd be really hard to know.
So explain to me how much fentanyl in a pill can kill.
So the rule of thumb that people say is about 2 milligrams.
You really cannot even see the 2 milligrams of fentanyl in here. It's really that minute. 2 milligrams of fentanyl is potentially lethal enough to kill an average human being. Right here, we have 1 kilogram of fentanyl. According to law enforcement officials, this is potentially lethal enough to kill 500,000 people.
Folks, that's it. 2 milligrams to kill a human. These pills are being mixed up in batches somewhere in Mexico, right? By the Sinaloa drug cartel, by Nuevo Generacion. This is what they did. I'm telling you, this is what the drug cartels have done. They were selling, heroin and opium to junkies, right? And then they realized, there's this huge market of pills. Huge, right? Because you don't need to be a drug addict to take a Percocet. You don't need to be a drug addict to take an Oxycontin. You don't need to be a drug addict to take an Adderall. Just take it, selling it on the streets. And then people that have it, even if they're your friends, they don't want to tell you if they have a problem, right? They may be an addict, but they'll be like, oh yeah, this is, a Percocet. This is a prescription drug. This is an Adderall. And then all of a sudden you take it or your child takes it, and it just happens to be that batch. And to tell you how bad this is, because I know it's all numbers out there. When I say these things, I know a lot of times it just kind of goes in one ear and out the other for people. I mean, you just don't believe it could happen to you, right? Because your child's not an addict, because your husband's not an addict, your sister, brother. You think this is never going to happen to me. It will happen. The DEA, out of the drugs that they have already seized, has done extraordinary tests. So is the DPS. The DEA discovered that 40%, listen to this, 40% of the counterfeit pills that are on our streets that they have seized are lethal and deadly. They will kill you. You are literally playing Russian roulette, folks. Literally. And I'm going to tell you what makes this so evil and so frightening. It's China as well. Right now, there is a report. It's the U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission that issued a report in August of 2021 stating illicit fentanyl from China. You're not going to hear the government actually talk about this publicly right now. You're not. And I don't know why they want to protect China in this. I know that the Biden administration has been making some headway. Yes, I said that in certain areas, just like the Trump administration tried to do when it came to illicit narcotics on our streets. But you won't hear the truth. And the truth is very frightening. That the Chinese remain the primary country of origin for illicit fentanyl and fentanyl-related substances trafficked into the United States. Despite the pledge that they made to the Trump administration in 2019 to take all forms of fentanyl and its analogs and not ship them here. They are shipping the precursor chemicals needed to make the fentanyl. They are sending it into Mexico, and they are using the Mexican drug cartels to literally move and push this market of counterfeit, deadly counterfeit pills into the United States of America. That sounds like a direct threat to me. And we are going to continue to talk about that on this show. And we are going to continue to talk about it so we can save, even if I save one life here today, we have saved a life. That's how important this is. But without any further delay, I'm going to bring Attorney General Ken Paxton onto the show from my beautiful state of Texas. And we're going to do everything we can to get the truth out to you, to save this great state and to save our nation. Thank you so much, Attorney General Paxton, for joining the Sara Carter Show again. It's been a while since you've been on. Happy New Year, and I hope you had a great holiday.
Well, Happy New Year. Had a great holiday. Got to see all my kids, and we just had a great time, and certainly glad to have you in Texas now.
Oh, I'm so happy to be in Texas. And I know for Texans who have been here many generations, this has got to be kind of overwhelming to see people flocking from states that they would really never move to in a million years, to have folks coming in to their state, especially Texas and Florida. We are seeing it across the country. And a lot of it had to do with the mandates after COVID. And I believe what we call the empowerment of the local governments to kind of take over people's lives. And I mean, that's something that you've been fighting against here in the state of Texas. But are you hearing from other Texans, talking to other people, hearing about all the people that are moving here to the free state of Texas, free state of Florida? Are you seeing a big division in our country right now as far as those that want to limit the power of big government and those who don't?
Yeah, there's no doubt. People are voting with their feet. They're leaving places like California and New York and Illinois and Connecticut and New Jersey to come to places like Florida and Texas and Tennessee and other Republican states where you do have opportunity, where you aren't being controlled by the government, where you have less taxes. And, those states have been growing for years. And that's why we've got more congressional delegation than we've had. And every 10 years that happens. But as the pandemic has caused governments in these other states, these more democratic states, to clamp down on people's freedoms, I think the exodus from those states has increased, and people are seeking freedom.
Oh, I know. We've been talking to friends, in where we left in Virginia, and thankfully now I think Virginia was a great example of how everything shifted. We now have a Republican governor in Virginia, Governor Youngkin, soon to be taking over there, and but still, they're saying that it's so bad. It became so unbearable. And I know, because I lived through it, that even now children are not, if they feel sick, they don't want to tell their parents. They don't want to be taken out of school for 2 weeks. People are not being very honest about like their COVID tests. And I think that people are just very frustrated with how the government has mandated their lives down to the nitty gritty. I mean, they just feel suffocated by this. And that's pretty daunting, because it's kind of a backlash, right? As to what they needed to have done. Here in Texas, you don't see that. You don't feel that. People are really responsible for the most part and doing their part for their neighbors, but people don't feel suffocated by the government. That is one thing.
Well, there's certainly been efforts by local governments, school districts and cities and counties, not everywhere, but in some places in Texas, particularly the larger metropolitan areas, to clamp down on people's freedom. And we fought back. We sued them over mask mandates. We sued them over vaccine mandates, and we've been successful in Texas. And as we fought our way up, and we're still in many of those fights, but if there is a sort of element of that, it's in our more metropolitan, more liberal, democratically controlled cities where we still have some issues we have to fight as well.
Well, this week, a big issue showed up in the court. This week, Texas sued to protect the Texas National Guard from vaccine mandates. You did that. Explain this decision and how optimistic you are about winning this case.
So we have, I think, 5 federal lawsuits against the Biden administration over the vaccine mandate, and we have many state cases. But this one in particular was on behalf of the governor. He has the authority and responsibility of the Texas Guard and the Texas National Guard until such time as the president calls them up for certain service. And the president has not done that. He's not followed the law, which is not unusual for this president. It's a typical everyday occurrence. So we sued him in federal court, arguing that he doesn't have the authority to dictate to these National Guardsmen. And I think about 40% of them have not gotten the vaccine, and they ought to have that
Right.
choice. That choice ought to be made by them and their doctors, and not by Joe Biden and his administration, as to whether they want to have a job or protect their own health.
Right. Well, my future son-in-law was one of those in the National Guard. He's in another state, and they're being mandated to take that vaccine. I think it's happening this week. And he was like, look, I've already had COVID. I don't want to take the vaccine this soon. Why are you mandating me? But the big threat, too, is for a lot of these young men and women who are in the National Guard is that they've been told that they're going to remove all of their benefits, that they would have to pay back the school if they use the National Guard for their education. That they're going to have to pay back the National Guard for that, the U.S. government for that. So they're using a lot of tactics to get people to go in and get vaccinated, even when they've made the decision, because some of them are very young, that they don't want to have this vaccine yet. I know a lot of them just want to wait a few years and see where, what happens with the vaccine. Of course, they have the right to make their own decisions, I believe, with this vaccine. Are you hearing that as well? I mean, is the National Guard, U.S. government, making those same kind of, I would say it's kind of like a threat. We're going to have to kick you out and you're going to have to pay everything back.
Yeah, and that's why we filed this lawsuit. It's exactly why, because there are many people in the National Guard that are serving our country, that are along our Texas border trying to help prevent illegal immigration. And, they shouldn't have to be forced to lose their jobs or lose benefits. That's federal coercion. We believe, in violation of federal law, and it's illegal. And the Biden administration has no qualms about making these people suffer. And look, these people are serving along the border in the Texas National Guard and the Texas Guard. They're being exposed to COVID. As a matter of fact, our border agents, the death rate is up 275%. And so the Biden administration is fine inviting as many possible human beings across our border illegally with no vaccination and with no testing. They're allowed to be transported all over the country, and at the same time force Americans to choose between their jobs and their health. I find that reprehensible at the best.
It's so hypocritical as well, because it makes no sense. I'm down at the border. I'm there all the time. We're covering the stories, on Sean Hannity, on Fox News. We're trying to bring the focus and the truth to the American people. And one of the issues that I find, you called it reprehensible, I believe that as well, is this issue of allowing people into the country. They're not testing. They're not requiring vaccines. There's no mandate there. And I was reading in Reuters and the AP, I'm sure a lot of you folks out there that are listening to the Attorney General and I have also read these stories. It's that the pharmaceutical companies don't want to take on that responsibility from lawsuits. And I'm like, well, they're putting people in buses and they're sending them all across the United States. And by the way, it's not just COVID. When people come into this country legally, they are tested if they're applying for their citizenship for a slew of, I would say, diseases and viruses. And, there's a whole rigorous testing that takes place when someone comes into the U.S. But the people that are crossing the border, and they're from over 150 countries around the world, are not being tested. And I know for a fact from Immigration and Customs Enforcement officers and Border Patrol agents that they're being let go into the country.
Well, and here's the other reality. If you're an American citizen and you travel overseas, you have to be tested in order to get back in. And if you test positive for COVID, they're not going to let you in until your CDC time period elapses. So, even for American citizens, we are treated much worse than the illegals are treated by the Biden administration. It just shows you how they rank these issues. And on level of importance, protecting Americans' lives is apparently not as important as letting illegals cross the border, because we know that the illegal immigration creates higher risk of COVID transmissions, killing people. We know that there's an increased supply of fentanyl and other drugs killing people. And we know that there's greater crime in our country as a result of the cartels having so much influence in our country, killing people. And the Biden administration says that's fine as long as we get more illegals in this country. And it's hard to accept that we have a president that views it as, we're going to trade thousands of lives in order to get our policies through, but that's where we are.
Right. So this brings me, I was going to talk about this a little bit later in our interview, but I'm going to talk about it right now. The issue of redistricting, right? So this is another big issue that you're dealing with. And the Justice Department, basically sued the state of Texas over redistricting maps, basically saying that there were plans to discriminate against minority voters, particularly Latinos, that have fueled this state's population. I'm saying, well, they're letting them into the country. It's almost like this crazy, it's so upside down. I don't think the American people really understand what's happening here. We're so confused because on the one hand, they say that we have to worry about everybody's life, our grandparents' life, our workers, our employers. And I'm going to get to the Supreme Court and the mandates in a minute. But on the other hand, they're letting everybody in. Now they're suing over redistricting, blaming the Republicans, saying that they're not giving the Latino population the best representation and that they're diluting their votes. Well, they're opening the border. They're the ones letting everybody in pretty much. I mean, this administration is doing exactly, in my opinion, what it wants to do. And that is letting everybody in.
They absolutely are. And I think it's hard for us to accept that we have a president that literally would say it's okay if Americans die as long as we get more illegals in this country to vote and to have an impact on Republican states. The other thing that's maybe hard to accept is the discrimination going on here is not us. It's the federal government. They're not suing Illinois for their crazy lines or any of these other Democratic states that have drawn really, outlandishly, slanted lines. They're only suing Republican states like Texas. So in my opinion, if you want to talk about discrimination, it's political bias discrimination by the Biden administration to only attack maps that don't favor their party. Because what their ultimate goal is, let's be clear, they want a one-party system. Part of the reason they're so willing to do illegal immigration and let Americans die is because they know that if they can get control of this country with a one-party system, they get to make all the decisions, and then every state is under their influence, and every state is lacking freedom.
And that's exactly what I believe is happening here. I mean, there's no other way to look at this. And I'm trying to stand outside objectively, look at what's happening here. But the focus of the Democratic Party on Texas has been ridiculous. I mean, they are obsessed with turning Texas blue. It's the money that's been poured into this state by the Democrats has been unheard of. We saw what was happening even in Austin, beautiful Austin, Texas, with the Democrat efforts there in Austin, even on the local level. But we're seeing it now. What do you think is going to happen with these lawsuits? What do you think is going to happen with these redistricting lawsuits here in Texas?
Well, I think we're going to be successful. We had the same lawsuits with the Biden administration. I mean, the Obama administration. We won those. It took 8.5 years. I don't think it's going to take as long. So I'm very confident about that. But I think even more concerning is and you may not be aware of this, but there was a Texas Criminal Court of Appeals decision made right before Christmas, 2 days after the filing deadline to run against these people. They're all Republicans. But in Texas, George Soros has been very successful at getting DAs changed out in places like San Antonio and Austin. He switched out Democratic DAs so that he could have more control. And so the reality is we have DAs there that are unlikely to ever prosecute anything like voter fraud. So we do it at the state level. Well, the Court of Criminal Appeals ruled 2 days after their filing deadline on December 15th, so no one can run against them now, that the Attorney General office in Texas can no longer prosecute voter fraud, that it's illegal, it's unconstitutional. Mind you, the Constitution in Texas in Article 4 specifically grants Texas Attorney General certain powers, and one of those is to do such thing as are required by law. So in other words, whatever the legislature decides the Attorney General can do. And in 1951, that power was granted to the Attorney General to prosecute voter fraud. We've been doing it for over 70 years. So this isn't just my thing. And it's a check on voter fraud in Texas. And if you'll look, we prosecute hundreds of cases every year that are being investigated or prosecuted. And so now that's taken away. The Court of Criminal Appeals, a 8-1 vote, a Republican court. If this is allowed to stand and we are unable to go back, and this is the highest court on criminal matters. So there's nowhere to appeal it. If that stands, I can predict right now what's going to happen. Voter fraud in these counties like Travis and Harris and Bear and Dallas, we are going to lose the state of Texas rather quickly because there's going to be no one to prosecute it. And the Court of Criminal Appeals, a Republican court, just turned the state over to the Democrats if we can't figure out some way to undo this.
Oh gosh, that is a dire prediction, Attorney General. Where am I going to go? I can't. We're going to have to do everything we can to fight this.
Sarah, look, Sarah, this is why I'm trying to make people aware of it. Who knows how these people made this decision? That this is like they had to overrule their own precedent. They had to overrule Texas Supreme Court precedent. They had to overrule the legislature from 1951, and they had to overrule that specific provision of the Constitution that allows such other things as required by law. And that's been interpreted to mean basically whatever the legislature has decided the Attorney General can do. And so, the only answer so far is let's do a constitutional amendment. But the reality is that would take Democratic votes. So that's not possible. So we have to come up with some other solution. And I don't know what that is yet, since this just happened mid-December. But we're working on trying to come up with a solution and making people aware. The Texas Criminal Court of Appeals, we're all focused on what's going on with Biden. We're focused on all this other stuff. And they may have just backdoored the win that they need. Because if they can take Texas through voter fraud in these counties, Texas Court of Criminal Appeals has turned over the state to the Democrats, and then we're done. We have a one-party system in the country.
And that is truly terrifying. And that's why it's so important. I'm telling everyone out there that's listening to us right now, you've got to look at your local level. This is why it is so important to pay attention to politics in your own community and to see who's in your community and what's happening. Because this is almost like the frog slowly boiling. We've been talking about this. This has been happening in the state of Texas, but it's been happening everywhere. You brought up George Soros. And just for those of you out there, I'm sure all of our listeners know who George Soros is. But for those of you that don't, he's a billionaire philanthropist. He's 91 years old. He's been basically quietly financing all of these DAs, trying to put new DAs in. We saw that in Fairfax, Virginia. We see what's happening in California, investing tens of millions of dollars to ensure that progressive candidates are put in district attorney races throughout the country. And so what I don't understand here is how the Republicans could have given this up. How did that happen?
Well, here's the deal. I don't understand it either. It is the most mind-boggling thing. If they understand what they're doing, which I think they do, they purposely changed 70-something years of precedent. They went out of their way to do it, and they overruled all the other precedent before it, knowingly. They know that these prosecutions will go away and that they have opened the door to this turning very Democratic very quickly. And I can tell
something
you,
happened here. Something happened here because that
and it was it was a genius move because very few people know what the Criminal Court of Appeals does. They don't realize they are the Supreme Court for criminal matters. We have two tracks in Texas: civil and criminal. The Texas Supreme Court does civil; these guys do criminal. No one pays attention to who gets elected, other than the DAs are pretty much focused on who gets elected. And so, they answer typically to different people than most Republican elected officials. And so it's very interesting to me, the timing of this, the fact that it was done 2 days after their filing deadline. So they're all going to be safe in November. No Republicans are running against them. And then, the time period, if we can't fix this by November, and by the way, we've asked for a motion for rehearing to ask them to reconsider their decision, which we think is a travesty. And so the more Texans know about this, the better. And I'm going to try to educate people, but very few people know about this or understand the dire consequences of this decision.
I mean, there's going to be literally have to be some kind of public, a big public statement, some type of, I guess, operation to try to get the citizens of Texas to really understand what's going on here. Because I haven't heard one person talk about this to me. And I know there's a lot of Texans that are really worried about the state turning blue.
I think they have some of the more woke groups. There are groups like Texans for Lawsuit Reform that are claiming, this is constitutional, that the DAs control all criminal matters, but they are not looking at what the rest of the provision of Article 22, Section 4 says, or Section 4, Article 22. They aren't even looking at that provision that says the legislature, such other things as prescribed by law, and the fact that there is a history of the legislature delegating authority to the Attorney General constitutionally. And they are telling people, oh, this is a good decision. No, this is a devastating decision. It is in my opinion, could be the worst decision in Texas history.
Wow. That's huge because a lot of things rest on this. One of the issues that's been really, I think, and I'm just going to move on to this really quick because I think it'll play right into what's happening here in the state of Texas with what you said is the new heartbeat law. You're waiting on the Supreme Court to rule on that heartbeat law, which would ban most abortions in Texas once a fetal heartbeat is detected. I think that's amazing. And I think that's important because I am really pro-life all the way with when it comes to every living creature on earth. I think that we have to respect, but when it comes to a human life, I think that is so important. And it's such an honor and humbling experience to know that people are actually fighting for these children that can't fight for themselves. How do you think the oral arguments went, and what do you think is going to happen?
Well, so the oral arguments went really well, and as it turned out, there was a decision made, but there was a slight issue that's still being resolved at the Fifth Circuit level. So basically, the Texas Heartbeat Bill is staying in place, and there's one issue related to whether the medical board in Texas can punish doctors for doing abortions. That's going to be litigated here very shortly, but I'm very confident we're going to win on that issue. And effectively, since September 1st, over 100 babies in Texas are living because of this heartbeat bill. So I'm very pleased that we've been successful so far. And every day that we keep this in place, more than 100 lives are saved for the state of Texas.
Wow, that is just really impressive, and it's so remarkable to see Texas take a lead on that. And I guess it's actually kind of frightening to think what could happen to the state of Texas if we don't resolve the issues that you just discussed. Last but not least, and then I'm going to let you close up with whatever you want. I do want to ask you about the 10-state coalition to regulate big tech censorship and what's going on with that. What are you guys doing as far as I guess holding accountable these huge tech mega platforms from censoring people? And I just can't believe we're dealing with this right now in the United States of America from free speech.
Well, so we've approached this in different ways. We have a lawsuit against Google, which is very expensive to sue them on anti-competitive, antitrust issues. We have many states involved in that. That's just it's going to take us a while to get through it because they throw up all the roadblocks they can to slow it down. But we, in the end, believe we'll be successful in forcing them to acknowledge that they have committed anti-competitive practices. And then we have investigations going of Amazon and Twitter and Google and Facebook regarding what you're talking about, which is when they deplatformed the president and others. When we took out Parler, and it looked like there was sort of a conspiracy to work together to stop competition. And certainly in the United States, it's all about competition. If we have competition and these free speech issues are resolved, people have choices. They're trying to quash all choices and then quash free speech. And that's a real problem given the fact that we have First Amendment rights. And some would say, well, businesses can do whatever they want. Well, if they control the marketplace, and there is no competition, and that is the means and mode of communication, then our First Amendment rights are being quashed, and that is a problem.
And that is the basis of the lawsuit, right? It's antitrust lawsuits.
Yes, so antitrust so far, but we're also investigating some of these free speech issues and anti-competitive issues and deplatforming Parler and the fact that competition is being taken away. Because if we had competition, then you can make some argument that, Twitter can do whatever they want. We've got another place we can go and have our arguments heard and not quashed by some liberal, company.
Yeah, but Google doesn't allow that to happen. And we've seen that with the platforms, with the major platforms and how they target advertising on people's websites so people can't exist. It's like with me, even my website, saracarter.com, we have to be very careful. I mean, because Google monitors everything, and I've seen them censor stories that are just basic fact. I mean, there's no conjecture. There's nothing to it. It's a basic factual story. And they've warned us, that this doesn't fit the platform. They're going to pull advertising, unless you pull the story. And to me, that is censorship. I mean, and that's almost like a fascist type of censorship coming from these these massive corporations that basically have more power than any corporation has ever had in the history of mankind.
That's exactly right. They're making so much money. They are making more than some nations make. They're larger than many nations. They're like, and when Texas files a lawsuit, typically we're the gorilla, not we're not the small player here. Goliath is the big tech, and we're David trying to take on some of these huge companies that have unlimited funds, and they make contributions to all the politicians, and they work in the legislature to try to defund my my budget this time. So they are a powerful force. When somebody like me takes them on, the same time I'm taking on the federal government, there's a lot of forces that come against you to try to take you out, so you stop fighting these big forces.
Wow. Well, let me tell you, I am grateful to have you, Attorney General, fighting the big fight for all of us. But last question, what do our listeners do? What do regular American citizens do to help be a part of this, to help stand up and say, look, no more. We're not going to allow our country to go down this road. What can they do? Who can they contact?
I think one is they cannot be afraid to speak out. There's this fear sometimes of speaking out. The government's going to come after you, or big tech. If we all adopt that attitude, we lose. As Benjamin Franklin, I think he said something like, if we don't hang together, we're all going to hang alone. So,
right.
When the federal government threatens parents, and the Attorney General of the United States threatens parents for speaking out at school board meetings, they need to speak out more, not less. We need to speak out more. We need to become educated about what's going on. For instance, the issue I just talked about with criminal court of appeals. People just don't know about that. They need to become educated, start talking to their friends about it, start talking to their elected officials, say, we cannot let this happen in Texas, because we could lose Texas by November, or maybe it takes 2 years for them to get enough votes to undo our elections. But it is on its way. They're coming at us from multiple fronts, and they're doing it through mail-in ballots. They're doing it through these changing of election laws. They're doing it through the Court of Criminal Appeals that are making it impossible to go after voter fraud. So we have to be diligent, and I think our founders knew that we had to be diligent. So if Americans want to keep their freedom, they need to be diligent about guarding it.
Well, I am going to be a part of that fight in exposing the truth to not only the citizens of Texas, but to citizens all across the United States. Will you send me the information that I'll need to get that? We're going to get that out on our website at saracarter.com. We're also going to make sure that everyone hears this podcast. And for all of you out there that are listening, especially those of you that are Texans, remember, this is a very serious issue with the Court of Appeals. And I'll have it on my website with a link to this interview, Attorney General, so that people can be made aware of what's going on. We'll put it up on our Twitter feed. We'll put it up on Instagram. And I'll make sure that the facts are out there for everyone. And I want to thank you so much for being a part of this show. And I welcome you back. I know you got a long fight ahead of you. And you're up against a lot of, like you said, it's David and Goliath. And I want to thank you for taking the time to bring that fight here, so we can be right behind you, helping fight that good fight.
Well, I really appreciate you talking about these issues. They're critically important to the survival of Texas and the country. And I don't think we've been in this situation, at least in my lifetime, where we're fighting so hard. And so it's such a crisis point in whether Americans are going to keep their freedom or give it up. And I'm praying, fighting that, and hoping that we'll all fight together, keep that freedom.
That's right. That's right. Remember, it sneaks up on us. One day we wake up and there's no more freedom. And that's what happened to people in communist countries, where they woke up one morning and said, what the heck just happened? Where it just happened right underneath their noses. So we got to remain aware. We got to remain vigilant. Thank you so much, Attorney General, for taking all this time to be with us today.
All right, Sarah, have a Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. I'll be coming to you with like some crazy stories, but first, let me tell you about the stock market. You all know how volatile it is, and the current administration looks to increase your taxes, pander to China, and I've already explained to you how dangerous China is, right? And mislead you about inflation. That's far worse than a few mean tweets, right? So in honor of better financial times, Universal Coin and Bullion is offering 1 ounce of pure silver tribute coin featuring America's 45th president, Donald J. Trump, at their cost, folks. You'll get a pure 1 ounce silver coin honoring former President Trump at the same price Universal Coin buys it from their vendors. Think about that. Throughout history, silver and gold have been a hedge against inflation, and a guaranteed asset you can turn to when times are uncertain. And with Biden and Harris in office, the uncertainty seems like it's getting worse. Call Universal Coin at 1-800-UCB-GOLD. That's 1-800-UCB-GOLD. Their professional staff, led by America's gold expert, Dr. Mike Fulgens, are waiting for you to call at 1-800-UCB-GOLD to get your pure silver President Trump tribute coin at dealer's cost. Okay, this is really funny, although in a scary way, because it's Jen Psaki, right? And it was almost as if, like when you see those movies where spiritualists are like channeling people through their bodies and like at it, they're totally faking it, but they're doing it and they're working so hard at it. This is Jen Psaki literally channeling, still alive, mind you, channeling Nancy Pelosi from years ago on the must pass Build Back Better to find out what's in the bill. Listen to this.
But they don't know exactly what's in Build Back Better and what it means. And it's always easier to sell a package to the public once it's passed. So we are hoping we're going to get to that point. That is our objective.
Okay. And I know how heavy this show's been. I know this show has been extraordinarily heavy. And, so I had to put that Jen Psaki clip in there and get her ghost, the ghost or whatever, the live ghost of Nancy Pelosi channeled. But this is another really weird story, right? Another really weird story. North Korean state news claims that Kim Jong-il invented the burrito just before he died in 2011. Folks, I live in the great state of Texas. I spent a lot of time in Mexico. I can guarantee you that that is fake news. Kim Jong-il did not invent the burrito. The burrito was here in Texas, right? The burrito is in Mexico. The burrito is sacred. It is a sacred Mexican dish. Now, Kim Jong-il could have invented a Korean version of the burrito. I'm going to give him that. He could have invented that, but he did not invent the burrito. Those are fighting words. Those are literally, on the edge of your seat. If he was still alive today, there could be war over that. It could lead to World War III. Could lead to World War III. You do not take away the burrito from Mexico. You do not do that. Folks, I got to tell you, there are some crazy stories out there. Have you like searched the web for any of like the strangest things of 2021? And I was like, I'm going to do that. I'm just going to make it fun. I'm going to read these to you really quick because you got to know some of these stories because they will be fun to talk about at the dinner table or, around the cooler at work if you're not all Omicroned at home. But there was a number one story in Florida this is on News Channel 8, was a man, by the way, he called himself Dr. Love. Dr. Love. He was a Florida man who faked being a teen doctor, and he has been arrested again. So it didn't take long for the Florida man to strike this year, according to the news. The Florida man, Dr. Love, who made headlines after impersonating a doctor as a teenager and then stealing from a patient, it landed behind bars again. Apparently, Love Robinson, known as Dr. Love, he was arrested for fraud and grand theft, although he did take a really great picture where he looked like a doctor. I'm not really a doctor, but I play one on TV. Number 2, Florida man steals entire stack of lottery tickets, and then he returned back to the same place he stole the lottery tickets from. He changed his clothes, though, and then he went there to steal the safe. He felt like he just didn't get enough. He's like, I got to go back and steal the safe. The guy is a complete idiot. But this number 3 story really takes the cake. According to the police, a man in Florida stole an alligator from a golf course, and then he tossed it around to teach it a lesson. I got to tell you, the best part of this story is looking at this guy's arrest picture because it is awesome. He's got like scratches on his face. He looks totally out of his mind crazy. He's got this like kind of like long, kind of crazy, stringy blonde hair. And he's just staring right at the camera like, yeah, I took that gator. And I swung it around. The man was accused of stealing the alligator from the Congo River Golf in Daytona Beach shores. This was in July last year. He was 32 years old. Then he was seen trying to toss the gator onto the roof of a building before beating it and stomping on it. I'm just taking a lucky guess here, but I think the guy was on drugs. That's just me. And I got to run to Arkansas really quick. And I'm just, I'm going to tell you what happened in Arkansas, some of the craziest shit that we just don't get the good news. You know what I mean? This is like good. This is like feel good news. It makes you feel good that you are not this person, right? But apparently a naked woman was tackled by an Arkansas state trooper after pursuit in a stolen truck. So this trooper had to tackle Deirdre Lewis, who is 48. I've seen the video. It's not pretty. He had to tackle her. It was a multiple state agency, chase down a highway, and she was naked the whole time. Her charges right now include theft, aggravated assault, and fleeing in connection to an incident that took place on March 25th, which was her running around naked and driving people mad and driving all over the highway naked and then making police tackle her. I'm sure that they charged her with some other stuff too, but that's kind of crazy. Let me tell you this other story. This is great. A woman is suing state police trooper. This is in Arkansas. After the trooper used a pit maneuver on her vehicle, right? Pit maneuver. Apparently she turned upside down in the vehicle. I tell you, the Arkansas State Police have a lot on their hands, There's number 3, last but not least, this is a feel good story. It really is. An Arkansas dog, remember this, that was missing for 10 years, returned home. How about that? His name was Razzle. Razzle, the dog, returned home to his family after a decade away. He disappeared from McRae in 2011 and ended up 1,900 miles away at a trailer park in Stockton, California. Okay, I don't believe that he walked the whole way. I've been to Stockton, California. Someone picked that damn dog up and they took it to Stockton, California. Thanks to a microchip, though, and the kindness of strangers, someone found Razzle. Wow. After all those years, and brought him back home and reunited him with his family. Folks, thank you so much for being a part of the Sara Carter Show. Remember, we've got to fight the good fight. We are here to work together. We are the United States of America, and God help us. We need to make sure that we stay that way. That's why I brought on Attorney General Ken Paxton. He has informed us now that you know of this news. We have got to fight for the great state of Texas. We have got to fight through the courts, the legal way, and hold our lawmakers accountable for our nation. Thank you again for joining the Sara Carter Show. Remember, it's here where we're taking the story back. You can get all my links at saracarter.com. That is saracarter.com. And remember, while you're there, sign up for our email list. God bless you, and God bless the great state of Texas.
Hi, it's Dana Lash, host of The Dana Show. Every day, I'm here to keep you up to speed on the most important stories and info that you need to know in your very busy life. And if you're always on the go and you want to stay connected, just download our daily podcast and take it with you. It's a great way to get up to speed on what you need to know and what legacy media may not be telling you. Visit danaradio.com and click on the podcast link or subscribe at iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.